Instagram is now the #1 social media platform for photographers. So what I want to do in this video is share with you some tips on taking photos for Instagram, editing your images for Instagram, as well as tips on uploading and how to use hashtags. Stick around. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Now this video is all about Instagram. My question to you is, are you on Instagram? Because if you're not, then I really think you should consider it. Why? Instagram is amazing. It has close to 1 billion users and this is growing every single day. And Instagram is great because it's not just a great place to showcase your photos, but it's also a great place to go and look at amazing photography and images from all around the world. So I had an enjoyable morning taking photos, mostly with my iPhone or the Fuji X100S. This is a little mirrorless camera. I absolutely love it. It was a great morning. The weather was a bit hit and miss. It started off beautiful, got a bit cloudy after a while, and we did get a patch of rain as well. So it's now the afternoon. I'm back in the office, and the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I scored a haircut in between this morning and this afternoon. So what I want to do now is talk about some tips on how to capture great images for Instagram. Now let's start by talking about composition. Composition is really important because it can make or break an image. And if you want your images to stand out from the crowd, particularly on Instagram, then what you want is you want your pictures to be more engaging, and this is where composition comes in. There's one composition rule that is particularly popular. It's called the rule of thirds. It's so good I've made a video all about it, and you'll find a link up here. Now with the rule of thirds, it's about basically taking your subject away from the center of the frame. Sometimes a picture can look great if your subject is central and in the middle of the frame, but often things are more appealing to the eye if the subject is slightly off center. So the rule of thirds is about dividing your image into 3 sections, thirds vertically as well as horizontally. Now because this is such a great composition rule, on the iPhone you can set up these things called grid lines. So when I'm taking a picture, I like to use the grid lines to ensure that not only is my horizon level, but that I'm considering using the rule of thirds. So I'm going to show you how to set this up. On an iPhone, let's begin by selecting settings, scrolling down to camera, select camera, then look for grid. Turn the grid on and we're done. Setting up the grid lines on the iPhone is quite easy. I'm pretty sure you can do it on most of the other smartphones as well. Now with the grid lines in place, what we do is we take our subject and we move it away from the center of the frame and place it where the lines intersect, of which there are 4 choices available. So earlier on, I took a walk around a place called Cleveland on the Brisbane Bayside. There's a lighthouse there. Great photo opportunity, and rather than put my subject in the middle, which I started with, I used the rule of thirds, moved it off to the side for what I think is a more engaging looking image. Now if you can, consider following me on Instagram. I've got a whole heap of images on there and the rule of thirds crops up quite a lot. Now my next composition tip is to consider changing your viewpoint. What I mean by this is consider taking a picture, maybe a bit from a lower viewpoint or maybe even a higher viewpoint. Dropping your camera, be it a phone or a larger camera, dropping it down from the usual eye level down lower to the ground can make for a more interesting or more engaging photo. Equally, lifting your camera up higher can make the picture more interesting because what you're doing is you're delivering an image from a viewpoint that is not of the norm, and that can make your picture stand out from the crowd. Going back to the lighthouse, after taking my earlier photo, what I did is I got really close to the lighthouse, looked up the lighthouse for what I think is a really unusual view, and it's not one that a lot of people would take a picture of. And again, I think this makes the picture more interesting and more engaging. Just a couple of weeks ago, I did an iPhone photography course here in Brisbane, and I had a young lady on the course who had these amazing red Dr. Martin boots, and I thought they would make a great photo. So we were talking about this subject and trying to make our pictures more interesting by dropping the camera down really low. So what I asked this person to do was to stand with her boots against a puddle. It'd been raining the day before, and I got the camera, it was my iPhone, really down to the ground. It was virtually touching the puddle, and I've got this great photo of her red boots reflecting in the puddle. And after a little bit of editing, what I did is I also flipped the image upside down to make it more interesting. So the reflection is actually at the top and the boots are at the bottom. I think it's a pretty cool photo. It did pretty well on Instagram too. Now next up, we're going to talk focusing and also exposure. Now with a larger camera like this, you can use different focus modes to make sure your subject is sharp, and you can also adjust your exposure by adjusting things like your ISO, your aperture and your shutter speed. But if you're just taking pictures on your iPhone or any smartphone for that reason, you can do much the same. With an iPhone, you focus simply by touching the screen where you want the camera to focus. So the first thing I do after I've got my composition done is I touch the screen or tap the screen so that my camera then knows where to focus. Now after that, I can adjust the exposure. So after tapping, I can then swipe my finger up and down and adjust the exposure, making my picture brighter or darker. Now some of you may have already known this one, but if you didn't and you've got an iPhone, this is going to change your lives. Now my next tip is to do with the lens. If you've got a larger camera like a DSLR camera or something like this mirrorless Fujifilm camera here, then I guess once in a while you'll probably clean the lens. But if you're taking photos with a smartphone, you might not consider this. This is the lens, and because of the location, it will get dusty. It will get fingerprints on it, and this will make your picture look soft or out of focus. So once in a while, give it a clean. Your t-shirt will do the job just fine if you don't have a lens cloth handy. You will take your pictures from this to this. So far, all of the tips have been about capturing our images, the process that I go through when I'm taking a photo, composition, lighting, focus, all very, very important. And of course, the next step is to edit our images before we upload them to Instagram. For Instagram, I do most of my editing on my phone using a free app called Snapseed. I'll put some details in the link below. It's an amazing app. But of course, if I've taken a picture with a larger camera like this one, then one of the first things I've got to do is I've got to get the pictures off this and onto my phone. So another good tip, if you've got an iPhone, pick up one of these. This is a Lightning to SD card reader. They're really cheap. I'll put a link down below. And this will easily get your pictures off the bigger camera onto your phone. So if I've taken pictures on my smartphone or I've transferred them to my phone, I'm now ready to edit my images, and I'm going to run through an edit with you. Let's start by opening up Snapseed. So we're going to begin by opening up the Snapseed app, tap in the middle here to open our image. I'm going to select an image here from one of my folders, and the picture here is of the Cleveland Lighthouse. Now, this app is very easy to use. You'll see tools at the bottom. If I click on that, this brings up the main menu, and there are lots of tools, lots of options to play with. My go-to to begin with is always Tune Image. Now to look at the Tune Image menu, you simply scroll up and down with your finger and choose an option. I'm going to choose something called Ambience. To make a change to Ambience, we just go left to right. To the left reduces the ambience, to the right increases the ambience. And what this will do is it will lift colours, particularly the sky and some of the shadows. I'm quite happy with that. So next I'm going to go up and down and choose a different option, this time choosing shadows, because I want to lift some of the shadows here. Again, if I go to the left, the shadows will get just darker, but if I go to the right, I can increase the shadows and make them brighter. There's a little icon in the top right hand corner. Click in here. Shows you your progress so far. So just in a few seconds, we already made quite a good change to this image. I'm happy with the changes, so I click the tick button, bottom right. If I was unhappy, I click the cross. So I click on the tick, and this is my image so far. Now I don't think it needs a lot of work, this image, so next I'm going to go to Tools, I'm going to go to Details, and this is where you sharpen your image. There's two options available, Sharpen and Structure. Structure being my favourite, as it does tend to bring out details in clouds, textures and things as well. This is pretty awesome. Clicking on here shows us the detail, and look how it's emphasising the cloud detail. Love that, so I'm going to click the tick box. And the last thing I want to do is add some colour to this image. If I go to vintage, what this will do is it will add a colour and give the image a sort of vintage, sort of film print type look. Now again, there's lots of options to choose from. I am quite liking this look. So what I do next is I'm going to make some fine changes to this saturation. If I want to increase the saturation or decrease the saturation, I'm quite happy with that. Just going to bring the brightness up a tiny bit. And again, this is my progress so far. I'm quite happy, so I'm going to click on tick. This is my starting image. This is my edit. That just took a couple of minutes. That's how good Snapseed is. Clicking on export, and there's a few different options to play with. I'm going to click export, and this will export an image to my folder, but leave the original image. I think Snapseed is an awesome app, and it pretty much is my go-to when I'm editing images on the go. I love it so much, I've done a separate video all about it. So if you're interested in knowing more about Snapseed, look out for the link. I'll put it in the description below the video. So I've given you some tips on capturing your images, editing your images, and now finally sharing your images on Instagram. Now, when you post an image to Instagram, there's a whole heap of cool things you can do. You can add a description, you can tag people, add a location, plus of course there are hashtags. And all of these things are really, really important if you want your images to be seen and be noticed. So particularly important if maybe you've got a small business or you're a budding photographer and you want your pictures to be seen and you want to get a bit of a following. So I'm going to take you through the process that I go through when I'm posting an image to Instagram. Now the description sits below the image. Instagram like to call this the caption. This is a place where you can write a few details about the image you are posting. Very useful. I tend to write information based around maybe location, camera used, maybe camera settings, things that are relevant. I don't like it being too wordy, to be honest. I may also occasionally tag other Instagram accounts, particularly if I would like them to see the image. So as an example, if I took a picture with a Nikon camera, I might want Nikon Australia to see it. So I will tag @Nikon Australia. And this can be very useful because they are more likely to see the image. If they do and they like it, they might even share it. And that can get me a whole lot of extra views and a whole lot of extra followers. Hashtags are incredibly important. Keep them relevant, but at the same time, think outside the box a little bit. Using the hashtags blue sky, Bayside, sea view and rule of thirds will help this image that I'm posting reach a broader audience. Tagging people when posting an image is almost as important as using the right hashtags. For example, this image was taken in the Redlands. If I tag Redland Bay Council and they see the image, at the very least they might like it or comment on it, but if they share it, I'm going to benefit. According to the latest stats, you could see an increase of up to 79% engagement with your Instagram images if you use the location tool. Adding a location means that people can find you if they're searching for you. So for example, if you're a small business, you're a coffee shop in Brisbane, then use the location tab, because if someone's looking for a coffee shop in Brisbane, they're more likely to discover you. Now don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Simply look for Photo Genius Brisbane, and if you're posting images to Instagram, consider using the hashtag PhotoGenius. That way I can find your images, because I'd love to see what some of you guys are posting. In this video, I've shared with you some great tips on capturing, editing and sharing your images on Instagram. So if you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Don't forget, you can leave your comments, suggestions and questions down below, and I really do make an effort to try and answer every single one. I hope to see you sometime soon. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. See ya.